Hello, everybody. My name is Chuck Everson, and welcome to the Big East Rewind with my co-host, Sonny Spera from Syracuse University. How are you today, Sonny?
Chuck, doing great. Looking forward to today's episode. Should be fun.
It's going to be fun. Let me ask you, how are you feeling today? You feeling all right? I know you're getting a little older. You're getting a little up in age, so you got any aches and pains or anything bothering you?
Yeah. And, when you get a little bit older, those aches and pains linger. Hey, hang on. You wake up in the morning and you just kind of creak, and then you put your feet on the ground. Oh,
Ice and Advil. That was the old days, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Today, we're going to take care of all your ailments, Sonny. We have two of the best trainers in the Big East. All right. So from Villanova University is our first guest. From Villanova University is Fran Raggazino. Franny was there when we were there in '85 and had a great career there and went on to be a trainer at St. Joseph's University. Fran was kind of the apprentice, if you will, to Jake Nevin, and then took over the program when Jake got ill. So welcome, Fran. Welcome. I'm sorry we can't see you, but we know you're here with us.
Oh, good evening, guys, and thanks for having me. And this is a really fun stroll down memory lane, certainly with the Big East tournament starting this week. All kinds of good things come to mind.
Good stuff. Sonny, why don't you introduce your friend there that you've worked with?
Oh, this guy has saved me on multiple occasions, and he saved a lot more important people than me, I can tell you that much. So this is you just become good, close friends, and I considered him another father or at least an uncle. I don't know if you like that or not, but he was our trainer and our confidant and our close friend, and his name is Don Lowe, and he is in the Athletic Hall of Fame, I am told from what Fran told me. I didn't know that. He was at Syracuse.
National Athletic Trainers Hall of Fame.
There it is. National Athletic Trainers Hall of Fame. Thanks, Fran. And he was at Syracuse from 75 to 2000. Welcome, the great Don Lowe.
Thanks, Sonny. Thanks. It's great to be here. Fran, hello. Good to hear your voice.
It's good to be heard. Certainly I'm not seen tonight, but that's okay.
So let's start it off. Don, tell us how you got to get the position at Syracuse. How did you come to get that job with Syracuse University?
Well, I was at Kent State University, and Otho Davis was with the Philadelphia Eagles, trainer there, and he was my mentor at Kent State before he left. Went from Kent State to Duke, and then into the Baltimore Colts, and then the Eagles, and so we always kept in touch. And he married a gal from the Kent area, and they were back there one holiday, and I went to visit them, and my wife and I went to visit them, and the Syracuse University job had opened up, and the year before, Kent State had played Syracuse in football, and we won the game, and so I'm reading about the job, and I'm thinking, Christ, if Kent State can beat them, I want to go up the ladder. I don't know if this is a good move or not. So I talked to Otho, and he said, "Hey, boy, that's going to be that's a good school, good job. You need to apply for it." And I said, "Yeah, I better, because today's the last day to apply." And I did, and a couple of people called, and he went up there and interviewed with Les Dye and some coaches, and fortunately got the job, and moved there in July of '75, and was a great move, a wonderful move in my life. Our children grew up there, and our son was born there, and just a tremendous opportunity for me and our family, and I have so many great memories of all the players I worked with and coaches, and I did work both football and basketball, so I had a breadth of exposure there to a lot of athletes, a lot of different personalities, and the mentality of those two different sports, but that's how I got there, through a recommendation from Otho Davis, and wonderful experience.
How about you, Fran? How did you wind up at Nova?
Well, I went to state school in Westchester State College. Was really well known for their athletic training program, and their program sort of exploded, and they weren't quite sure what to do with all the students that were in the program at the time, so they started farming people out. And I was lucky enough my sophomore year to go out to Villanova. And as a kid from southeastern Pennsylvania, growing up as a kid, I was a Villanova fan all the way back to 1971 when they went to the Final Four, and Howard Porter and all the great teams then. And I hung around long enough that they got sick of me being there, and I spent a lot of time at Villanova, became a part of the family, and they hired me, and I was lucky enough to be in the right place in 1985 to be a part of this great championship that we all are. And I got my master's degree at Villanova because I love the place so much, just to be a part of the Villanova family, and I still am welcome there to this day, and it means a lot to me.
I got to ask you, Fran, I can't let you go from Villanova to St. Joseph's without a little conversation there. That would be like Don going over to Georgetown. So tell me how that went.
Not the same, yeah.
Couldn't have been smooth.
It was not easy. And to this day, I do a lecture to the curriculum athletic training programs. I work in the business side of athletic training now, and I talk to them about that. And I tell the students, it is the hardest professional decision I ever had to make in my life. Again, I am a Villanovan inside and out, and St. Joe's came after me really hard, and rarely does anyone say no to Don DeGiulio, who was the athletic director there at the time. I wasn't the head athletic trainer overall at Villanova. I was the head basketball guy along with Jake, and after Jake passed away. But it was really, really tough, and I always say how important it is to go to mentors, and one of my mentors said to me, "Are you really that much of a jerk that you're going to let the rivalry get in the way?" I said, "Yeah, it's a big deal. It was really hard." But at 28, I got the chance to become a head athletic trainer at a Division I school. And it was not easy the 4 years that I worked at St. Joe's. At the time, the Big Five, as many of you know, is a big Philadelphia rivalry, and it went to a every other year type of deal. So I didn't have to face Villanova when I was at St. Joe's all 4 years, which I was very happy about. But the people at St. Joe's were terrific to me when I was there, other than having to hear about Villanova every day. They are committed to their hatred for Villanova. So it wasn't easy.
Don, how old were you when you got to Syracuse?
Like 32, something like that. And,
Okay.
when I first got there, I think I recall that Les Dye hired me to be the football trainer, and that was it. And Roy Danforth was someplace over the summer, and when he came back, he came in the training room and introduced himself and kind of started going off about the fact that, you're not going to work basketball. And I really like basketball. I worked at Kent State, and so I said, "Nah, hell, I want to do that." And so I went into Les Dye the next day, and I said, "Look, Danforth's a little kind of upset about this." I said, I like basketball. So I said, let's don't have a problem here. Let me just work both of them. And back then it wasn't a big problem because football ended, right about Thanksgiving when basketball was starting. And of course, as we got better and better, then the seasons grew longer, and it became a little bit more of a problem. But since I had a good staff, there was a chance to overlap that. But man, I remember when Boeheim was the assistant, and when we traveled, when he was the assistant, I roomed with him. And God, he loved TV. The movies were on at night, the old TV shows, and so I got to know him pretty well, and kind of got to the point where I said, I probably should just do the football. And then Jim got the job the next year.
Right, 76.
And he knew he and I always talking, and he kind of knew I was leaning to not do it. And he said, "Geez, I'm starting this out. I need, you could really help me." And I said, "Jim, I'll do it." So I started out and never regretted that. I mean, I had so many great memories with Jim and with the basketball program. I grew as a person and grew professionally, and just a wonderful experience. The Big East, when it formed, it was unbelievable. I think we started tournaments in Providence, then we jumped to Connecticut, then slipped up to Syracuse, and
Mm-hmm.
You know, the brainiac, Gavitt got us down at the Garden, and that was it. And what great memories.
So I got to ask you, right? In the dome, right, where the games were, at least from 80 moving forward, 80, 81 moving forward, right, out of Manly, the training room was literally attached to the locker room, and we always entered through the training room. And back in the day, Coach Boeheim required every single player had both ankles taped. I remember that.
Yep.
And so just talk about some of the relationships and some of the things, because I think people think of a trainer, a guy gets hurt, trainer comes out, but it goes way beyond that. Talk a little bit about those relationships and how that all kind of
Well, you know, my philosophy was if we had all the guys' ankles taped, it was going to prevent injuries. And if a kid did sprain his ankle and it was taped, it wouldn't be as severe.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either severity or prevention stuff. So we had that policy. It was tough on the trainer because, you know, you had more work to do. If you're not taping ankles, it's a lot easier. But you know, the kids all had to come through there. I saw everybody. And, you know, there was a lot of levity and a lot of seriousness, you know, as well. I look back at that era and think I'm pretty lucky because, you know, I see some of the things today and, you know, I'm sure the kids are tough, but to me, you know, I kind of look at back, you guys, you know, nobody wanted to get out, you know, everybody wanted to play. They wanted to practice, wanted to play. They weren't saving themselves for the next two big games, or they weren't saving themselves for the NBA and stuff like that. So we had some great experiences there. And, you know, the experience with the kids, I tell you right now, I had a job that on occasion was tough and difficult, but I'm going to tell you something. I didn't look at it as a job. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
the fun was dealing with the players, you know, the personalities. Some of them were easy to get along with, some weren't so easy, but I just loved the time I had with kids. I think it kept me younger. It kept me excited. And, you know, my entire career, I, from the very outset, wanted to be one of the best trainers in the country. I didn't want to just have a job. I wanted to you know, to be really good at it. And I'm really lucky because Syracuse afforded me the opportunity to really, really do a lot of things with the Olympics, with the NATA, with New York State. I helped form the New York State Athletic Trainers Association and eventually formed a society called the College Athletic Trainers Society in 1992. They just gave me opportunity after opportunity. And Jake Krauthamel, God bless him, you know, he supported me all the way. And Boeheim and the football coaches and people like that had my back. And so I had a great job. But the number one thing, I loved the time with the players. It was fun. I used to bust a lot of balls. And
you did. Yes,
you know, I can
did.
name some guys that, you know, they used to come in there and, you know, have the long face and I can't practice. I got this, I got that. And 15 minutes later, they're out on the floor practicing. And, you know, it was fun. I loved it.
So, Fran, what about you? Talk about, you know, because to the guys that played, and speaking as somebody that played while you were there, to the guys that played, you were more than just a guy to go to for an aspirin or get an ankle taped or an ice bag or what have you. You really had everybody's best interest at heart and really took good care of us, both in a physical way and both in a mental way sometimes, because you were a sounding board for us when we couldn't really talk to Coach Mass about certain things. You know, we would talk to you about, you know, certain things, and you always had a way of making everything feel okay. So talk to us about the relationships you had with some of the players at Nova.
Well, the most wonderful thing is that I had Jake Nevin in a mentor role. And when I got to work with, I knew Jake growing up. Again, he was a fixture in Philadelphia with Villanova for 56 years, and on the big 5 games, when you watch him on a black and white TV, this little leprechaun-looking man, you knew who he was. When I got with him, you know, the technical aspects of our profession were sort of passing him. But I had the unbelievable luck to sit with him, and when we weren't busting stones, and that was about 90% of the time, or 99 stats. That's a little inside joke. Sorry, folks. I could talk to Jake about, over the years, how did you deal with this? Jumbo Elliott was a legendary track coach there. He was high strung. He would yell at us. He would tell us that we were making things up when athletes had stress fractures. And I used to say, Jake, how do you deal with that? And Jake would just say, well, you know, they got big egos. Let them think it's their way, and you'll get things done better. And I used to be able to pick Jake's brain on that. And it really set me up to be sort of across the board in terms of my approach with the athletes. And I had a ball. And yes, I coveted the confidences that I did have with the athletes. And I was young. I was close to their age. I was only a couple of years older than them. And it was really fun. And I was privy to a lot more than most athletic trainers would be. And I covet it to this day. When we get together alone in our inner sanctum, we laugh about that. But we did, I did that. One of the things I talked to Chuck about last week, and I'll share, if one of the young men were out late the night before and they were honest with me, and, you know, alcohol was involved and they were a little issued that day, practice might have been a question. As long as they didn't make a habit of it, I would talk to the team physician and we would write in their charts, transient virus. And that meant that we just gave them a day. And of course, Rolly never went for that, but we tried it anyway. But if you went back and looked in their files, you'd see a couple transient viruses here or there. Dr. Frank Furman was our team physician, and he that's what we came up with. But again, I was really lucky to have that, and the players did feel close to me in terms of, because of my age and all that kind of stuff. And again, it was a fun atmosphere. We were only serious when we had to be. Believe me, that was the moniker of how we lived and ran at Villanova.
So that virus was only transmitted through vodka. Does I understand that transmission?
Vodka, beer, et cetera. But yes, and again, it wasn't something that was all the time, but, you know, every now and then, we'd give somebody a pass if it was certainly duly noted, if you will, especially if they were honest about it, and because we were putting our butts on the line, because Coach Mass wasn't the easiest person to deal with in that neck of the woods.
Think about that for a second, Fran, and Don both. I mean, both of you guys work for some pretty fiery coaches. You know, you see them both on the sideline. Coach Boeheim can yell with the best of them, and nobody was better yelling at everybody than Coach Massimino. That's a fact. But that said, how did you deal with their personalities on a day-to-day basis like that? Don, you first.
I tell you right now, I'm pretty lucky. Jim Boeheim never questioned me, never. If I said something, that was it. And he didn't bitch if a guy had to take the day off or couldn't do this or that. I mean, he just knew it was part of the life and college athletics. Always supported me. You know, I'm sure I can remember a few times where he wasn't real happy with some of the decisions, especially on some of the knee arthroscopes and stuff like that, that were hard to sell as being needed. But man, I'm going to tell you something. I really had a pretty lucky because he was very, very supportive, cared about the kids. He bitched at them and yelled at them, and, which coaches are supposed to be doing anyway. But boy, I was lucky, and I was lucky with the kids we had. I mean, I don't like to throw out any names, because as soon as you start tossing names out, you'll leave a ton of guys out, and that's not good. But so many memories of guys that that needed kicked in the butt sometimes and needed hugged another time. And I was pretty fortunate that the hugs were more prevalent than the kicks in the butt, but I could do both. And I enjoyed both.
Fran, talk a little.
Didn't I, Sonny?
You did. You liked them. You liked the bust stones. Fran, talk a little bit about Coach Mass. Talk a little bit about those interactions. Share whatever you'd like to share.
Well, I will tell you right now, as I told that story and I was at his funeral, God rest his soul, I looked around to make sure that I'm not going to get struck down with lightning, letting that out of the bag, because I could hear him now. I'll transient virus you, Jack. You better go get a job. You think you're a doctor. I heard it all. I mean, I got hammered. I was really young. You think you're a doctor. You don't know anything, and the whole deal. And I met him. We were I'm Irish and Italian, but my last name's very Italian. And then the Italian side of me and him, we locked horns on a lot of things. But he knew always that the players were first and foremost in my best wishes, and I cared about the kids the most. Mm-hmm. And when I would go and tell them such, he's not sick. You're just sticking up for him again. That's all you do. I'm coach. Come on, the kid has a fever. Like, give him a break today, And then you got to get it checked out. And that everybody had to have blood tests all the time. So I'd call the doctors and say, this is what he wants. All right, we'll take care of it. So again, trying to make it, taking Jake's advice and let him kind of feel like it was his idea. And we would try to come up with a consensus. All right, say, all right, coach, how do you want to handle this? It was a challenge, but I always, even when it was tough on me and I'd get down, the players had a mutual love back for me. And that was my motivation, that I know that they always had my back, and I was hyped up and ready to go every day because of what they brought and how hard they worked. And I would work just as hard as they did to make sure that we were all rowing the boat together.
Now, when we traveled, I'm going to ask Don about when we traveled, because I remember a few events very specifically. We used to rent cars. We would typically get, this is now my time, that might have changed, but we used to get 4 of the biggest, either Cadillac or Continentals or Ford Town cars, the biggest cars we could get. And we would stuff in the driver, which was either Coach Boeheim, Bernie, Brendan, or Don. And then we would stuff in, there would be 3 in the front seat, right? And then there'd be 3 in the back. Two with the driver. And Don, you were one of the drivers. And do you remember any little funny events that happened on the way to maybe Madison Square Garden or anything?
Sonny, let me just tell you this. That was the dumbest moves we ever made. But we always, from the time I got there, they rented cars. But now they use buses.
Yeah.
When I was at Kent and other places, they used buses. When I first got to Syracuse, I had no clue about New York City, Boston. You got to be kidding me. And we get to the damn airport and get with rental cars, and those guys all just took off. And I got players in the car. I'm saying, I hope you know where we're going, because I don't know how to get there. Well, and one time we were in LaGuardia and leaving the parking garage, and 2 of the cars ran into each other. We bumped into each other and banged the cars up in the parking lot. Another time we're going into the Big East tournament from LaGuardia Marriott there. And I believe Brendan hit a police car, or
say it.
I think
say
it.
Police car. I was waiting. If you weren't going there, I was going there.
And one time we were in Boston to play BC. We're out at the Marriott there.
We stayed out there. Yeah, Newton or something.
You know where it was? Newton. Yeah. So we're going, and I'm in the first car, and I got the guys. We're going. And nobody shows up. And I'm there, and I'm looking at the clock. I said, the game's going to be going here. We got to take the floor here in a little bit. I had a wreck. Some woman banged into Boeheim's car, and then Bernie hit her car, something like that. So they had to wait on the police. And of course, a couple of the stars were in Boeheim's car, and one of them banged his knee, and like this. But I didn't know where they were. And we're there. When all of a sudden they came in, and we were supposed to go out on the floor in like 2 minutes. I got to do a bunch of stuff. And then I got to listen to Bernie and Jim bitch about who caused the wreck and stuff like that. But it was amazing. One time we go to Providence. I go down there. The guy who runs the Marriott called and he said, do you guys have one of these fancy Lincolns out there? And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, well, somebody hit it in the parking lot last night. They destroyed the back of a brand new car. I think the car had about 100 miles on it, and it was the one Bernie had. And of course, when we got back to Boston Marriott or airport, Bernie doesn't want to stand there and talk to people. He said, "Hey, Jim, you're running this show. You get over and talk to these people." And so I just left and went with the kids to the airport. But,
Those were fun times. Those were fun times.
well, hey, listen, a lot of anxiety for me in cities that I ever drove in before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Southern Ohio, for God's sake. Me to be in a big city in the early '70s or in the mid '70s there.
Yeah.
I was like the guys dealing with the iPads. I'm like Fran with this iPad thing. I would have lost.
So, Fran, talk a little bit about your travels. You travel with the team?
All the time, yeah. It was great, and and I tell people this towards the end of Jake's life, I was his sort of primary caretaker, and I valued that so much. I'll tell Jake's story about rooming. If you were before Jake got sick, if I was traveling or we all were, and Chuck can verify this, if it was like 11 o'clock at night and Jake knocked on your door and you let him in, Jake didn't sleep. Jake was 412, as he told people, and he little people need a little amount of sleep, and he would stay up all night. He would catch guys all the time after curfew and all that. If he invited you invited him into your room, he would stay there up and keep you up all night long, and you'd say, "Let me go to sleep." No, you're rude. You invited me in. And there's stories, Marty Marbach, he let Marty sleep for about 5 minutes one night, and he got a big thing of ice water and threw it in the bed and made Marbach stay up all night long. You invited me in. So, yeah, there was always hijinks going on, especially with Jake around. But another story that comes to mind now, when you got to the Big East, it was great. Into the city, and as we all know, Runyon's was the unofficial Big East hangout, and the owner of Runyon's at the time, Joe, was a Villanova grad, so it was a pretty good thing. Well, we got done, put everything away, and lo and behold, the phone rang for me at Runyon's. And I'm like, who in God's name is calling me? Who the hell knows I'm here? Well, it's the guy on the other end of this conversation. Mr. Everson didn't feel well. So I had to leave my social scene at Runyon's, get in a cab, come back, take care of Chuck, and I got back down to Runyon's to stay out to about 3:30 in the morning. But again, the commitment to what I knew what my job was all about. And
he's killing your social life, man. He's killing your social life.
Killed him, yeah. I killed him. So,
but
Fran,
again,
go ahead, Fran. I'm sorry.
No. And the other thing that just comes to mind as we're talking and listening to Don's voice, it certainly takes me back. Every year we would have the luncheon for the Big East tournament. And it was kind of cool because they used to sit all the athletic trainers together. And everybody would take shots and barbs. And I think either Don went into the EATA Hall of Fame that year or the NATA Hall of Fame. And Ron Linfont from St. John's and I went to Burger King and got him one of those crowns. And that was on his plate when he came to sit down. We all kind of had a good time bowing and honoring him in the same light. And then almost invariably, the late Randy Shrout from BC, who was a great guy, we'd be sitting there, we'd be waiting. And Laurie Michaels from Georgetown would come and we'd be waiting. And he would ask, "Laurie, where are you guys staying?" "Come on, Randy, I can't tell you where we're staying." "Come on, where are you? Out in the middle?" He would guess, out in East Hamptons, the middle is. "No, I can't tell you. And we would all sit there together at the luncheon and just laugh and really have a pretty good time and take jabs at each other through the year. But we were certainly supportive of each other.
Fran, that's great because annually that was a highlight when we had that banquet at luncheon to sit there at a group of trainers that we all cared about each other. And but like he said, I'll tell you right now, Georgetown, we got on Lori, where the heck you staying? Where the heck you staying? And, she just giggled. She knew what we were doing. But Fran, those great memories.
Yeah. Again, another.
Go ahead, Fran.
Just another real quick thing, just talking about Lori, what a wonderful human being she is. The night that we won the championship, one of the classiest things I've ever experienced in sports, she seeked me out with all the hubbub going on to come over and give me a hug and congratulate me, from athletic trainer to athletic trainer for winning the championship. And that really meant a lot to me. And we were, close because of that and all that kind of good stuff.
So you guys had the best seat in the house, pretty much, courtside seats to every game. Do you look at the game differently because you might have a kid who tweaked an ankle that week or tweaked a hamstring or something? Are you watching to see if this kid is going to go down? And if so, are you already have yourself mentally prepared on how to treat that person?
Well, just let me check in with one thing here real quickly, Don, before you jump in here. I had the worst seat in the house. 'Cause I was at the very end of the bench, and there were 7-footers standing in front of me about 99% of the time. I saw virtually nothing. So at one point, I used to sit like Jake. I used to do a 90-degree at the end of the bench and sit on my kit, and it infuriated Dave Gavitt to no end. And I didn't know it. He wasn't mad at me. He was just mad that was a happenstance of that situation. But I needed to see what was going on because one of our athletes, who I will not mention, sprained his ankle because he missed a dunk. But he didn't really sprain his ankle, but he missed a dunk and was embarrassed. And I'm out there asking all my questions, and he's like, "Leave me alone." I'll just leave it at that. Go ahead, Don.
Listen, he was already on the show. I'll say it was Dwayne McClain, Sonny. I'll tell him the story. And it was in the, I believe that was a North Carolina game, right?
It was. And, you know, again, I knew what that meant. And I didn't see it because, I didn't see what happened. And of course, there was always lots of snickering after that all happened. But, it happens. But, but back to your thing, Chuck, real quick, when someone was hurt and all that sort of stuff, like, you spayed, you just had contingencies in your mind as to what you would do. You're just kind of a little more hyper vigilant, but that's how we're trained in our education, to be always on top of that stuff and to think of 1 or 2 steps ahead of the action.
I'm going to take us, Don, I'm going to take us back to a Syracuse Georgetown moment.
Yep.
When the Carrier Dome was just absolutely packed, because as it always was for the Georgetown game, and we had the cheerleaders that were making those pyramids. Oh. And you remember when Michelle Munn hit the deck, and then the place went silent. You could hear a pin drop. I'm sure you remember that. Do you want to describe some of the events that occurred? Because you were right there.
I do remember it. Scary moment. And I think right after that, they stopped allowing pyramids. The girl had a concussion, certainly could have had a neck fracture, and really, she could have really, it could have been much worse than it was. And but I do remember that, and I do know that the care for her, was the best we could do. And we certainly learned from it, but what a scary moment. And fortunately, the girl was not hurt bad.
Mm-hmm. She came back.
But scary moment. I can remember like it was yesterday. And
right, and our court, where the court was, where you came in, Chuck, where the teams came in, that wind tunnel area.
Yeah.
There was also a garage door, and there was always an ambulance parked there, right, Don?
Yeah.
And then
when I got to Syracuse,
was it Coach? Was it Doc Baker and you that were out there at that time?
That again?
Was that you and Doc Baker at that time?
Doc Baker and myself and a couple of people were involved with the medical services for the dome were there, and it was a scary moment.
Yeah.
When I got to Syracuse, one of the first things I said, when we play a football game or a basketball game or any game where there's a lot of contact or potential for injury, we're going to have an ambulance. And so they supported that and always had an ambulance there. I remember once we went on an away trip. I'm not going to name the school, but we went there, and an incident happened, and wasn't with a player, but it was again with a cheerleader. Man, it took forever for them to get an ambulance there, and the gal did fracture her neck. And
oh my!
So scary moment. Now, I got to ask you a question, Sonny. Fran's talking, and we know about basketball mentality and stuff like that. Because I work both football and basketball, do you think you guys on the basketball team suffered a little bit? Because I had a little bit of the football tough guy mentality and carried it over to basketball. I mean, two different sports, two different approaches to athletes. I understood that totally. I knew that I could never treat a basketball player approach like I did the football guys.
Well, Don,
because you had to be a little tough.
Let me tell you,
And,
I remember a guy came in from the football practice, right? He came in and he held his hand up, and this pinky was sticking this way. Okay.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't north south, it was east west. And he was screaming. And I know we were sitting there getting tape because we were practicing at Manly. And I remember looking, and I remember you brought him over. Come here. Then you grabbed it and you just jerked that sucker and put it right back in place. And you're like, okay, get back out and play. And I remember looking at my buddies on the tape and training, like, man, don't ever do that with your finger. Don't let that ever happen to your hands. So yeah, did you teach us a little? You were a little kinder to us, but we got the idea. Like, hey, there's not going to be a whole lot of cushion here.
I always wondered about that because, I told a lot of trainers around the country that, you can't treat football and basketball the same.
Mhm.
But I at times caught myself maybe, talking to Ronnie Cycler or somebody like that, say, hey, Ronnie, Christ, this ain't a big deal. You got to get out there and practice. He used to joke with me. He's a guy I'll pick out. Later in life, he'd see me and he'd say, oh, I used to love to come in and see you and tell you about a problem. You say, take 2 Tylenol and put an ice bag on it and go out to practice. And he'd laugh about it. But I still had fun.
Yep.
So, Fran, let me ask you, because we've had some crazy injuries during your time where, when I say crazy, I mean, so the person wasn't hurt too bad, but was kind of
Do me a favor.
funny type of injury, if you will. Like maybe somebody made a shot and a guy was cheering and threw his back. Tell us about that story. Sonny's very good friend with the boy CB, and
I could not time out Commander Brown.
Lighten up.
He's representing our country so well in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and you want me to dime him out. CB, if you listen to this, I've been forced into this.
Duck threw you under the bus.
Oh man, bus, the trolley, all things together. So anyway, we were down at the Landover Center, right? That's where Georgetown used to play. Am I saying that right?
Cap Center.
And and it was double overtime winner. But prior to that, we could have won in the first, and Roley went bananas. And it was the wildest thing because that black ceiling down there, he threw a posy board because he was really angry, and it hit right on the edge of it, and it exploded. And all you'd see is this little flickering of the material that's on the front of the board, so you can use the white marker. It was like all over the place. And then he grabbed it, used like 2/3 of it, and started screaming and yelling. So that was, again, this leads up to this. So we're playing hard, and and Eddie Pinckney just always played so well against Patrick, and as did everybody. And with about, I guess, a second left, Dwight Wilbur from the far corner drains one, which probably would be a 3-pointer. Say it was a 2 to win the game. And we all jump up, and it's a great thing because I think Georgetown was number 2 in the nation at the time. And we're all hugging, and I'm like, get back here. I'm like, what? And Conley Brown is sitting on the bench because he jumped up. He hurt, and he was, from Texas, so he spoke real slowly. Man, I hurt my back jumping up. I'm like, I have to come back and take care of you when we're out on the floor. But yeah, that was my commitment. So sorry, Commander. I hate diming you out, but that's what we had to do. We had to take care of Conley's back because he jumped up quickly from the seat in the exhilaration of winning the game against Georgetown.
Chuck had told me part of that story. That's all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
Sonny, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Were you at Syracuse? And I'm getting a little old, so you got to ask a question. When we first opened up the dome and went to practice there?
I was there the second year. The first year the dome
Okay.
was open for practice was Sean Cairns and Jeannie Waldron's freshman year.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
They never heated the dome for practice. We used to go in there.
It was freezing.
And I'd be in the training room taking care of guys. We'd go out to practice, and the first day or two, I had to go back in, get my London fog top coat and wrap it around me and sit over on a bench. And Bear and I were like, what the hell is this? We're freezing to death. The players are freezing. It wasn't conducive. You're going to pull your hamstrings. Nobody wanted to be there. It was the most miserable time. And finally, Jimmy, got them to pump the heat up for practice. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, we go in there
it was
and
60
it would be
degrees.
like 50 some degrees.
Yeah.
And, Yeah.
I remember nobody wanted to take their sweats off. You know?
Oh, God.
That's why we wanted to go in the training room, Don. That room was heated.
No shit. Yeah.
And we were playing on that hard concrete floor with the tartan
Yeah.
surface just over it.
Time serve. Yeah.
So we're jumping on concrete, right? We're in freezing cold weather. That's why I think Leo and Pearl often had some. We didn't call them transient viruses, but they had some injuries that kept them out of action often during the practice sessions. You remember those days, Don?
Yeah. You know, I think everybody's got transient viruses, and you know, a couple of trainers had them too. You know, but you know, the dome was someone. Huh?
Yep. So
I wish Pearl would have had the
Go ahead, Fran.
I'm sorry. I wish Pearl would have had the transient virus when he played against Villanova, especially in the Big East tournament.
Yeah, no, he always had it the day after for some reason.
Well,
that never happened prior.
Never on game day.
he was really something. We were playing, and Rolly was really great at drawing up defenses and focusing, and it was like the middle of the second half, and I never forget Pearl went hard to the basket, and he went so hard with the layup, his like forearm slapped against the backboard, and he landed out of bounds. And I remember he turned and looked at Coach Bass and put his shoulders up, his hands like, "Are you gonna put anybody on me? Like, what's going on here?" And I was like, "Oh, he was a killer.
Yeah.
He was a killer."
I got to ask you, in your travels at least. Let's start with you, Fran. What is there any moment, whether home or away, where there was an injury or a situation where you were I'm going to say shocked, but startled, or really very overcome with kind of the situation? Is there anything that comes to mind? Any types of situations like that in games?
No, I really, again, my training served me well, as I'm sure Don's did in his education, and we were prepared for this stuff. The only thing that was questionable ever, like to your point here, Dwight Wilbur had an MCL, a medial collateral sprain, like a grade 1, but and we were in the Garden, and back then we used to put people in straight knee immobilizers then.
Yep.
And we didn't travel with that because I didn't have enough room for all that. And no one at the Garden, and they didn't have anything. So I had to go out and find a New York City, like a pharmacy. And it was like the crappiest one of all times. But I paid, this is back in like 1984, like $120 for this thing. And from that point forward, I carried that kind of stuff with me just in case we needed it.
Well,
but in terms of anything that ever went down, I felt really competent. And again, the rapport that I had with the players, that when I was coming out to them, we could really speak and communicate well with each other. Before I even touched the body part, I made eye contact. Hey, where are we with this? What's going on? And then we could go from there and stuff like that.
How about, was there any really horrible injuries that you remember? I mean, that come to mind?
No, nothing really, nothing other than the run of the mill stuff. Mark Plansky came with a defect in his knee his freshman year, and our team orthopedic Dr. Good called it exactly. The piece of the cartilage that's on the end of your bone sort of broke off, and he knew that was giving him a problem, and then he rehabbed from that. And I know you had Jesus on the other week talking about all his. I'm sure he didn't mention anything about himself and how well he feels now and all that kind of good stuff. Did he? I don't know, but
yeah, he's hard guy to talk to.
Yeah, he doesn't have. Mark Plansky has some self-esteem issues, but we can get over that. But sorry, Mark, I had to go give you a shot there.
You threw him under the bus. I didn't. I enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah, I did. He knows. He wouldn't expect any different. But nothing devastating. A lot of stuff seemed to get through the season to postseason stuff that anyone needed.
How about you, Don? Is there any like really like gruesome, horrific injuries that you remember? ACL, a broken leg, anything like that on the basketball?
Not really in basketball. I saw some gruesome stuff in other sports, but basketball,
we were pretty
really,
fortunate.
I think the two things that I recall was Michelle Munn in Syracuse Dome, and a girl at another school in another stupid cheerleading event, where the person actually fractured the neck. And so the two scariest things happened to cheerleaders.
Wow.
I do remember one year that jumps out to me that was kind of special was the 1983-84 season. I was fortunate enough to be the basketball trainer for the Pan American Games in '83, Caracas, Venezuela. What a wonderful 8 weeks that was for me, that whole summer, and on and on and on with Michael Jordan and Perkins and the kid from St. John's.
David Russell?
Nah,
Mullen.
Mullen?
Chris Mullen.
There you go.
I'll tell you, those guys, I was with them for 8 weeks. Unfortunately, Mullen had an injury in Puerto Rico and he had to get sent home. But the involvement with those guys and the relationship that came from that with St. John's and with North Carolina and, Jordan later when he was with the Bulls was wonderful. And it was amazing that year. All those teams came to the Dome to play and, got to see those guys. And when they came in, all of them wore their Pan Am warm-ups to shoot around the night before, and it was really, really something. I mean, I that was a special thing in basketball for me, to be exposed to that level of players. And then the next year I got to do the same thing with the Olympic stuff with the '84 Olympics and Knight and all those guys in Indiana, and I was involved with those trials and stuff. Just a great experience, which I think helped me with Syracuse, but a lot of memories.
So, Fran, one last question for you because we're running a little short on time, but we can't talk about athletic trainers without mentioning Jake, and I know you mentioned him throughout the program. Just briefly sum up what he meant to the guys on that team, especially the '85 team, and what he meant to the university, and share one or two quick ones, some stories, before we call it a night tonight.
Well, that would be my privilege, Chuck. Wow, I have a picture in my office of Jake. It's up. I look at it every day and just shake my head, and because again, it was never at a loss for a laugh. And Jake's ability to understand human nature was second to none of anyone I've ever met. Excuse me. He was really special. But the biggest story I'll tell you about, and just what a buster he is. Again, as I said, I helped be his caretaker along with his nephew. Jake was born, lived, and died in the same house, and he was never married. And he started to come down with symptoms of his not being able to walk. And I got to get through this quick. I know it's a long story, but long story short, he went to Temple and this university hospital and had a battery of tests done. And this neurosurgeon came in and was giving Jake a death sentence. And he started to explain about ALS, Lou Gehrig's this, Lou Gehrig's that, Lou Gehrig's this. After about 25 minutes, he said, "Mr. Nevin, do you have any questions?" And Jake looked at him. He says, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do die." He said, "Well, what it is?" He goes, "So you tell me it's Lou Gehrig's disease, huh?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Are you sure?" And the doctor said, "Well, yeah, Mr. Nevin, we've done these tests." He says, "Why do you ask him? Why do you think we got this wrong?" He says, "Well, I definitely think you guys got it wrong because I never played a day of baseball in my life."
Yeah, that's the kind of guy.
So that was Jake. And then I'll just give you a quick. So the doctor was ready to leave, and he goes, "I probably shouldn't ask this, but before I go, Mr. Nevin, do you have any questions?" He goes, "Well, let me ask you one more, Doc." He says, "You tell me it's my wheels are the first things to go." He says, "I know I'm having problems walking." He said, "Yeah, generally it works the way Lou Gehrig's works, from your legs to your hands and so forth and so on." He goes, "Again, I'll bite on it. Why do you ask?" He says, "Well, you see in my records, I've never been married, and you tell me I got a couple years left, if anything." He says, "I don't know. I might think about wanting to get married, and I just want to know if I do, if I'm at the altar and I get cold feet, I want to know if I have enough wheels so I can run the hell out of the church and quit on it." And the doctor just shook his head and walked out of the room. And that was Jake Nevin. And again, what a magical person he was and what he meant to the school. And he was the good luck charm, no question, through those 6 games through the NCAA tournament. By all means, it was, the motivation was there, and the guys everyone just loved him so much.
Hey, Fran, look, let me say this. Jake just wasn't a motivator for you and the people at your institution. All of us, I mean, people like that, we all looked up to, and they meant a tremendous amount to us in the profession. I mean, those were the people that kind of taught us what to do and how to do it.
Good point.
Well, that's a perfect way to wrap it up, Don. Thank you very much, Franny and Don, for being with us today. And it's an interesting insight and perspective coming from somebody who was part of the team but didn't physically have to go and play the game. But nonetheless, without you two guys, we couldn't do what Sonny and I did and what the rest of our teammates did on the court every night. So we thank you for that. We thank you for coming out tonight, and we appreciate you guys for coming in. We thank you very, very much.
Thanks for
Thank
working
you,
on
man.
our
Thank you.
minds and our bodies.
bless.
That's for
Right.
sure.
Hey, bless you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonny. Thank you, Chuck.
Hey,
It
Fran,
was really
thanks.
enjoyable to be on here.
Thanks,
Fran,
Good
Don.
luck with the
Be well.
podcast.
Thanks,
Thank
Be
guys.
you.
well, everybody. Yep.
So this
Thanks.
has been Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera for the Big East Rewind. The Big East Rewind, as always, was produced and directed by Daryl Gurney and Nick Chico Corvus. Check us out on YouTube, and if you like the YouTube channel, please subscribe. You can also get us on podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, iTunes, etc. If you have any comments, any questions, any suggestions, you can email us at bigeastrewind@gmail.com, or you can instant message Sonny Spera or myself, Chuck Everson. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.